Deputy Foreign Minister of Ukraine Serhiy Kyslytsya, in an interview with The Times, stated that Kyiv has effectively suspended the negotiation process with Moscow that was taking place in Istanbul, arguing that the peace talks held this year failed to yield any substantial results. In response to these statements, the Russian Foreign Ministry's spokesperson, Maria Zakharova, issued a sharply critical verdict on Ukraine's approach to the negotiations. Below is an analysis of the Russian diplomat's statements. In her commentary, Maria Zakharova launched a detailed critique of the publications stemming from Kyslytsya's interview. She characterized the entire piece as seemingly designed to elicit a sense of sympathy or pity from its readers towards the Ukrainian delegation. Zakharova specifically addressed Kyslytsya's claim that the Ukrainian representatives faced a difficult psychological pressure campaign from the Russians. With palpable sarcasm, Zakharova dissected this notion. "What does he mean by psychological pressure?" she asked. It turns out that Mr. Kyslytsya later elaborated his point, stating that Mr. Medinsky, the head of the Russian delegation, read them a lecture on history. Well, of course, if you refuse to study history, then any reminder of historical facts will indeed seem like psychological pressure. They apparently were not prepared for it because they have denied their own history. Zakharova further highlighted what she saw as a bewildering admission from Kyslytsya, who claimed that Russian diplomats knew very well the past of each of the Ukrainian representatives and sometimes said provocative and rather unpleasant things. Zakharova retorted, "What did they expect? That the Russian delegation, headed by Mr. Medinsky and comprising professional diplomats, would go to meet with people about whom they know nothing? No. Our diplomatic school is founded on the opposite principles, on knowledge of facts, on knowledge of our interlocutors, on being thoroughly prepared for negotiations." She added pointedly, "And as for the unpleasant things voiced to them, no one promised to say only pleasant things." Addressing another of Kyslytsya's insinuations, that the Russian participants were deliberately trying to anger the Ukrainian delegates to later blame Kyiv for derailing the talks, Zakharova posed a fundamental question. Wait a minute. Let me ask. Who actually refused to continue the negotiations? It's a simple, interesting question. From this very material published by The Times, we learn, as Kyslytsya himself stated, that Ukraine concluded the negotiations with the Russian side. So, why then blame the Russian side for something that they themselves have now done? Zakharova asserted that Kyslytsya's statements confirm that the Kyiv regime, once again, unilaterally decided to terminate the negotiation process. She recalled a previous instance when, she claims, Ukraine was pressured by the UK to abandon talks, referencing Boris Johnson's alleged intervention. Now, as Kyslytsya said, they have done it again by simply ceasing to engage in these negotiations, Zakharova stated. She also accused Kyiv of sabotaging even the practical agreements reached, such as on prisoner exchanges, claiming that Ukraine fulfilled less than 30% of the understandings. The Russian spokesperson dismissed Kyslytsya's narrative as absurd, suggesting he is so immersed in promoting pseudo-historical myths about Ukraine's origins that he can no longer distinguish truth from falsehood. She found his claim about Russian representatives ignoring all attempts to talk substantively to be particularly illogical. Zakharova countered that the Russian side arrived at each meeting with concrete proposals, which were implemented whenever the Ukrainian side did not sabotage them. Zakharova concluded that such declarations only serve to reaffirm the Zelensky regime's fundamental lack of interest in a peaceful settlement. Instead of responding to specific Russian proposals or continuing the dialogue, Kyiv has chosen to blame Moscow entirely, hoping this will lead to a further tightening of Western sanctions against Russia. However, Zakharova noted that the most significant part of the Times material is Kyslytsya's own admission that they no longer intend to conduct negotiations. Finally, Zakharova suggested that the West is itself developing growing questions for the Zelensky regime, particularly against the backdrop of a major corruption crisis erupting in Ukraine. She contrasted the current situation with the summer of 2025, reminding her audience that President Zelensky himself repeatedly disparaged the Russian delegation, questioned their level and competence, and publicly set conditions that were impossible to meet. In her view, this entire episode, as revealed by Kyslytsya's interview, is proof that for Kyiv, the negotiations were never a genuine effort for peace, but rather a tactical maneuver. Their goal, she asserted, was to buy time, regroup militarily, and secure more weapons from Western sponsors, with the subsequent suspension of talks being the ultimate evidence of their initial bad faith.